Hello sunshine. I just wanted to continue from my last video about my seed starting, so this is part 2. So let's get started. Before I get to sowing, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the seeds I'm going to be sowing, as well as how to read a seed packet. So the first thing that obviously I look at is the pictures, because I want to see how I want to see how the plant is going to look like in my garden. So the one I'm going to use is this one called Carnation. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, but it's Orange Sherbet. Okay, so this is the one I'm going to be sowing today. And so this one says, and I'll zoom it in right there for you, right there. So if you look at the very bottom, it said start indoors. So basically it means that you need to start these indoors if you want to get blooms outside. And then it also says you have to sow before your last frost date. It takes about 7 to 14 days to germinate. And then it also says days to maturity, this one is 130 and 140 days. And then it also gives you plant spacing, which this one says 6 inches. A lot of other companies will add even more information to the seed packets, but this is what I go by. And another thing that I also go by is more from experience than anything else. Like if I sow a seed this year and I knew that that plant, by the time it went outside, was way too big, like what happened with my tomatoes, I know that for the following year, I'm going to be sowing them a little bit later, just so that the plant doesn't get stressed, and 2, you're not taking care of a plant that's overgrown, because you don't really want your plants or your seedlings to be too grown before you have time to put them outside. You generally want your plants to be about this big when you're planting them outside. So what I do, and a lot of other gardeners do, is basically you need to find out what your zone is. And in my case, my zone is 6A. And then you also need to figure out your last frost date. Here where I live, our last frost date is around May 1st, from like May 1st to May 9th. And it's about Mother's Day weekend is when we can plant safe. But like I said previously, Michigan weather is a little bit unpredictable. So I always, as a rule of thumb, plant everything out after Memorial Day. With that being said, me finding out what my last frost date is, that's how you do it. You have to sow this one 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. So you go right here, and I already marked. I have this calendar that I got from Flower Hill Farm, and it's really helpful. And basically what I do is I mark down, and I always put last frost date just because I had a really bad experience last year when I planted out in Memorial Day. So this is where I usually say that my last frost date is. And then basically you count back the weeks from your last frost date. And so if this one says 6 to 8 weeks, I should be planting these in April. But what I also do is I also add the germination time that it takes. So this one says it takes 7 to 14 days. So I also add 2 more weeks on top of that one. So this one says that I should be planting these middle of March. But because I've had experience growing these in other years, I know that these don't grow as fast as other ones do. And not only that, but you also, with these, especially with the carnations, because they get really tall, you want to pinch them. And when you pinch them, that will set back your bloom time as well. So that's how I figure which ones I need to start now versus the ones I need to start a little bit later. It's mostly from experience. Like if you want to start all your seeds now, you can. But just keep in mind that you will be taking care of those plants for a very long time, just because your last frost date won't happen for a very long time. So I just showed you the this carnation that I'm gonna be growing, and I'm also gonna be growing this one called Grenadine King of Blacks, which is a really pretty purple color. But what I find very interesting about these two, and they're both carnations, one says to start 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost, in comparison to this one, which says 10 to 12 weeks before your last frost. And then the germination days to germination for this one is 14 to 21 days. But what's so funny about the two is they both take the same amount of time to germinate, and that's why I'm going to be starting these two at the same time today. I'm following the instructions of this one instead. And then the other one I'm going to be sowing is called Dichondra Silver Falls. I fell in love with Dichondra Silver Falls ever since Laura from Garden Answer did those jellyfish planters where she used Dichondra Silver Falls, and she also used some New Guinean patience. And this year, as every other year, I'm gonna try and see if I can do that as well in one of my hanging baskets. I've been trying for the past 3 years to do it, and every time I'm not very successful, mainly because the plants don't get too big, and I think it's because I'm starting them too late. So then Dichondra Falls says you need to start indoors 10 to 12 weeks before your last frost. And then it also says you need to sow on the surface and lightly cover the seed. So, and then it needs soil temperature. See, this is what I mean about other companies adding a little bit more details to their seed packets. So this one says the soil temperature should be between 70 and 75 degrees. And then the germination time for this one is 10 to 15 days. So I'm going to be growing Dichondra Silver Falls. And I'm also going to be growing Snapdragon Apple Blossom. And this one takes 8 to 10 weeks before your last frost, 7 to 14 days to germinate. And then again, this one says the temperature that it needs to germinate, which is 7 to 75 for the temperature. And so days to maturity says 110, 120 days to maturity. And it also says the plant spacing, which is 3 to 4 inches. And then it says to sow the seeds on the very top, which that gives me an indication that it might need light to germinate. And then the next one that I'm going to be growing is called Impatience Beacons and Mix. And I'll also put a picture up of that one so that you guys can see what it looks like. And so this one says, sow on the surface, press into soil. See, that's how I knew that the Snapdragons need light to germinate, because it said sow on surface and press into the soil. But this one does say needs light to germinate. And this one grows 14 to 18 inches tall. And then the spacing that you need to provide for it is 8 to 12 inches, what that means is how far apart you're going to be planting them in your garden. And then it takes 7 to 14 days to germinate. And the temperature that the soil needs to be at is between 70 to 75 degrees. And then the last one that I'm going to be growing is called, that I'm going to be sowing, sorry, is called Beard's Tongue Mix, which is, Beard's Tongue is penstemon. So in the back of the packet, which is kind of small, but I read that it needs the same kind of conditions as this one, but this one gives you a little bit more. It says that to cover it with a little bit of vermiculite, which I'm going to be doing that to all of my seeds that I'm going to be starting today. And then this one says that the germination can take 1 to 6 months, which in the past, I've grown these in the past. I've winter sowed them, and I've also grown them inside. I never get them to bloom for me, but I'm hoping that this year will be the year that I finally do get them to bloom for me. And I keep trying. You know, that's one thing about gardening. It's always an experiment. It's always you trying new things. It's always you trying and never giving up. And that's pretty much what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna keep trying until I get these to bloom for me. So those are the ones I'm gonna be sowing right now. I just wanted to give you a little bit more information about it. All right, so the first one I'm gonna be sowing is my penstemons. And just want to give you an idea of how tiny these seeds are. They're super small. I'm not gonna do too many. Famous last words, I know. But so I'm just gonna follow what the instructions said. And it said that you just surface sow these. And another thing also, if the seed packet doesn't give you the information of how deep to plant your seeds, you basically, as a rule of thumb, just plant them according to how big the seed is. So if a seed is about this big, then that's what you plant, that's how deep you plant them. In this case, these penstemons, they're really small, and they said to just surface soil. And so I'm just gonna sprinkle them on top, and we'll see what happens. And I also like to pat it down so that the seeds are making contact with the soil. Okay, this one's good. I want to sprinkle a little bit more just in case. Just because you never know. And I can always thin them out if they get to be too much. But sometimes I don't. Just because it makes me feel really sad to pinch them out at the very end. I know it's good for them, but it just makes me it still makes me a little sad that you have to do that. And then the last thing you want to do is mist them in. You don't want to use something that is that comes out too fast, because that will dislodge the seeds that you just put on the surface, and then they won't germinate for you. And then I just put this one there, and this one is done. Okay, so then the next one I'm going to be sowing is snapdragons, and I like these a lot, so I'm just going to be sowing a whole 40 cell of these. And so these I'm gonna try my very best to plant. Again, these are tiny as well. Some people, what they do is they'll put it in like a little cup and take a toothpick and water them, and that's how they plant. These I will be thinning out. I'm putting like 3 in each cell, but we'll see when they germinate, because they could be more. But I'm going to be doing a whole cell of 40 of these. Okay, a little bit more. These are supposed to be 200 seeds in this little thing. I believe it. Probably even more, to be honest. And they were only $2 from My Gardener. That's what I love shopping at My Gardener. You get a good deal. You get definitely get a good bang for your buck. Let's say, for instance, one of the cells doesn't germinate any of these seeds. I'll just take one out of another cell and put it in that cell. And again, mist them. And these and the other ones that I just finished sewing, I'm gonna put these in the bottom of the bottom shelf of my greenhouse, just because I use that one as my germination chamber for the small teeny tiny seeds that need light as well to germinate. And these lights, the lights that I have on them, are really close to the containers, and also the bottom shelf is the one that gets the most heat. And my greenhouse stays about 70-75 degrees, which is perfect for these that need to germinate in that kind of temperature. Okay. The next ones that I'm going to sow, ready, are my Beacon and Patience, and I'm going to be sowing all of these. This one is supposed to have 50 seeds in this one, and I'm going to sow them all in this one. Some of them I'm gonna double up. All right, I broke down and decided to do the toothpick method just because these are super small as well. So you wet it like this. I got a little souffle cup. I poured the seeds in here. See? And then I also got a little bit of water. Sometimes people just wet it with their tongue, but I don't want to do that. So I'll just use the water. Okay. And so basically, because the toothpick is wet, you can just precisely do it. You guys, I think there's more than 50 seeds in here. I'm going to be sowing 2 in each cell. Okay, so take a toothpick, wet it, and just put it on the surface of the soil. It's hard to believe that a little seed will turn into something beautiful. And hopefully I'll be able to save seeds from these. At least that's my hope. If not, I think I'll save some cuttings from them and see if that works out too. Because I've done in the past sun patience. There's no seeds for sun patience, but I've propagated sun patience in the past. As a matter of fact, I have some that I need to pot up that I overwintered from last year. I've had this plant for 2 years now, basically doing the same thing where I take a cutting from the mother plant, and then I put it in some water, and then they root, and then when they show their roots, you plant it in some soil. These need light to germinate. Don't you be coming with me? I think I'm not gonna do that. I think these are pelleted and I don't want to wet them too much. And the same thing, I'll make sure to mist these every day, and I will be keeping the humidity dome on them so that they germinate for me. And these take between 7 to 14 days to germinate. Make sure they're just a gentle stream. Okay. All right, these are done. So these I got these last year, and this one came with 10 seeds, and last year I think I did like 4 of them, and so I'm just gonna do 1 per cell, and these are a little bit bigger. I think these are also pelleted, to be honest. So I'm just gonna put them in the middle and see how many I get. So I have 2 cells of Dichondra silver falls, and it's a really pretty trailing thriller. It's what it's called. When you do a container, you do the thriller, filler, spiller, and this is a spiller because it just spills over the rim of whatever container it has, and it's really pretty. It has like a bluish tint to it, and it's really long, kind of like Creeping Jenny, but this one has a blue tint to it. Okay, there. It says lightly cover them, so I am not going to do too much to these, but just dig them in a little bit. So 2 cells of each carnation. So this, all right, and then I'm just gonna speed this up for you guys so you're not just here watching me do this. kind of funny. Last year, around this time, I had a lot of stuff planted. But that's because I got carried away. And then something suffered because I took care of some things, but I couldn't take care of the other ones because they were at a stage that they shouldn't have been. Which is why I'm doing it now, this time that I'm supposed to do it. It's just I get a little impatient because, you know, I want to have my hands in the soil, and when you start getting weather like we've been having, you just want to do it all. And so that's what happened to me last year. I don't want that to happen to me this year, so I'm showing a little bit restrained, which, to be honest, is really hard for me. Okay, these are more wet ones. Okay, so these are gonna be my onions, and they're already marked, so all I have to do is just look at what I have. Okay, so the first one is going to be white onion, and I've had these seeds since 2001, and I am going to use all of these, and if they all germinate, I'll just give them away to some of my coworkers. Like, I'll take stuff to my work and people take them. So basically with onions, particularly onions, and you get them at garden centers, they're heavily seeded, and that's because onions, their roots are very easy to separate because they don't intermingle with each other. They're very fibrous, so they're easy to separate. You know, I learned this from, you know, my gardener, and I believe he worked at a greenhouse, and that's the way they did it. They pretty much sowed a whole bunch of seeds in one tray like this, and that's what I'm gonna do. But I think that's gonna be way more than I want, but I don't want to still carry these seeds with me. Same thing with these Walla. These they don't need light to germinate, so you can kind of bury these. You know, I'm gonna try my hand and doing a couple things with onions other than just keeping them stored. I wanna have a lot of onions. Onions is another one that you do want to start early. I'm sprinkling them like just so that they're a little bit more spread out, but it really makes a difference. I've done it this way, kind of like what Emma Garner suggested, and I haven't had any problems. All right, and then this one is guardsman onion, which is a bunching onion, because I like those as well. I never tried growing bunching onions, so it's gonna be my first year growing them from seed. Another thing that you should do when, you know, your seeds start to sprout, when they get a certain height, you can clip them to keep them a little bit short, because they are a little top heavy and some of them will droop over, and so you just want to clip them so that they stay a manageable height. The last thing I'm gonna do is water them in, and then I will put them in my greenhouse, and I'll show you where they're gonna stay until they're ready to go outside. So I'll see you in a little bit. And here are my seeds. In the bottom shelf, I have my beacon impatiens, my snapdragons, and my penstemons. Fourth shelf, I have my onions and my celery. And this is just an extra tray that I have for the seeds that I have still in the petri dish. There's my Lysianthus, looking amazing. And then over here, I have the other ones. And then in this very top shelf, I have my pre-sprouted ranunculus and dahlias that I'm doing an experiment on that I will talk about in a little bit. I hope you all enjoyed this video and learned something new. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good one, guys. Bye.